So, everybody, firstly, thank you ever so much for joining us here today. This is our fourth Women in Technology IT Service Management Community of Practice. Hey, Jag, how you doing?
Hey, hello,
Would-
good afternoon,
Hello,
everyone. Hi,
nice to see you.
you too.
So we're just getting started. So this is our fourth ITSM Community of Practice, but as you may have guessed from looking at the agenda, this one isn't really going to be ITSM themed. Also, there may be some of you who've come here for the community coffee. Well, you're not in the wrong place. You're in the right place, but we've just stolen the time. So please stay, still put up that coffee. Please do whatever you would normally be doing on that session. You're more than welcome to contribute to this conversation. So today we've got an agenda item, as I've mentioned, that's not directly related to IT service management, but it's an agenda item that we believe impacts us all, no matter our role, no matter our industry, no matter our gender or our background. Hey, everyone that's coming in, it's lovely to see you. It's an agenda item that we hope will stimulate conversation and ultimately some action. And that agenda item is all you've ever wanted to know about allyship, but never dared to ask. Now, truthfully, I'm no expert in allyship. I actually first learned about the meaning of allyship from today's co-host of the community, which is Lucy Grimwade. It's a topic that came up in our very first meeting, and it's one that I think, judging by the number of people here today, it's one that we're hearing more and more about, which is why we thought it was really important to have this discussion as part of our ITSM community and any wider community. But also, just to be clear, we're not the experts, but what we want to do is generate conversation that helps us all develop a level of understanding where we can act as allies to one another and others in the future. Now, I think I know most people here, but before I begin, I will just introduce myself very briefly. So my name is David Bauer. I've worked in IT service related roles for 30 years. And in that time, I've had some incredible experiences. I've had some very average ones, and I've been party to and had some really quite horrific experiences. And now I work as a consultant with global clients. I sit on several service management communities. But taking all that away, over the last few years, what I've found to help me do my job is through creating communities. And those communities have enabled me to deliver digital transformations. They've enabled me to deliver positive change in organizations. But what I've seen more and what I've begun to value and cherish more is I've seen free team members to co-create value for themselves, to help them deliver great things for their colleagues, their partners and customers. But even more than that, I've actually seen it stimulate allyship. So I've seen teams come together to work together that previously only ever worked apart. But whilst that's been happening, I've seen them form relationships. I've seen them form friendships, and I've seen them help one another and dig one another out of holes when things have got pretty sticky in work situations and in other situations. And I've taken great pride in seeing that happen around me. So usually when we run these meetings, we'd start every meeting by asking everybody, what does value mean to you? But as I'm counting now, we've got 16, 17 people. We're not going to do that today, so nobody's going to get put on the spot. We're going to go straight into this topic of allyship. But what I would say is, if you contribute and if you're willing to contribute, please feel free to introduce yourself and offer some context about yourself as you do so. If you'd like to go into the chat section and just pop in there, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is why I'm here, that would be incredible. But also only do what you're comfortable with. There is no pressure here on you to do anything other than listen. But if you feel like you want to participate, we'd obviously welcome it. So to kick us off and get us going, Lucy's taken on the role of giving us some statistics that are really quite disturbing. Lucy's going to get us going, and then we're hoping that's going to generate some conversation. So Lucy, would you mind introducing yourself and taking us through those stats?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction as well, David. So hi everybody, I'm Lucy. I've pretty much met most of you anyway, but for those who I haven't met, I've been working in service management now for about 12, 13 years. Recently started to freelance within service management, but alongside working in IT and service management. I'm also a professional coach, a podcaster, and I'm a massive advocate for women in male-dominated fields. And I've built more and more and learning more about allyship. So I'm really excited for us to have this conversation today, just to kind of hear your perspectives, your experiences, and please feel free to share as much as you want to share with us, because it's all going to generate some really good conversation. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share some stats with you. And for those that were at Aviva last week, may have already seen these, be going to see them again. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Give me 2 seconds. Sharing it now. I'm going to bring all your beautiful faces back up here. So 2/3 of women are not confident in their ability to do their jobs. 80% of women struggle with low self-esteem and shy away from self-advocacy at work. One in 5 women in tech are thinking about leaving their jobs. And this next one, 100% of women in the world of Lucy Grimwade, this is, have experienced some form of bullying, harassment, and sexism in the workplace. And I presented this last week to the community at Aviva, and I shared that every single woman that I've encountered in my personal and professional life have told me a story of that they've been bullied at work, had sexual harassment at work, or experienced some form of sexism. So with those stats in mind, we want to pose the question to you and for us to generate the conversation around, what does allyship mean to you?
I think we said we wouldn't put anyone on the spot, but there's one person we can put on the spot here, and it's the man that built this program.
Who's that?
For those that didn't know. Kevin, you put this program together essentially, and to this day you continue to act as its figurehead. Are you able to kind of explain to us why you did that and what it means to you as a term in terms of allyship?
Yeah, thanks, David.
Sorry.
No, it's all right, mate. So, coming back to Luke's question, what does allyship mean to me is probably the best place to start. And I would say that my definition of allyship is being there to support people that don't necessarily fit in the same box that you fit in. So, be generally supportive to everybody that you encounter, of course, but making a conscious effort to do things that don't directly benefit you individually or the group of people that you're identified with, but have a wider impact to others and probably minority groups, I'd say. Why I set up the program, there wasn't really a key moment where I was like, Eureka, I need to do this, but it was through my work in the IT recruitment space, a lot of demand from our customers to help them attract and ultimately hire and retain female talent. And in trying to do that, recognizing that there were key areas where it was harder for women and people from other minority groups to get access to the same opportunities that that the individuals that I was typically dealing with, which were white middle-aged men, were benefiting from. And over time, that's changed. A lot of the things that were barriers back when I started working in this space are less and less barriers now, because a lot of that was around genuine bias that existed in people and their beliefs around the jobs that women could do and should do. And I think in the main, that has gone. So I don't think that there are as many people that would be knowingly sexist or doing things which would consider harassment, but there's still an element of unconscious bias. But for me, I think the main barrier is societal things. So things that are inherent in the way the world works, which either disproportionately affects women or people from other backgrounds, or it's a case of the world having to catch up. So there's lots of great things that exist now, lots of programs designed to get more women into the tech industry, to work with schools, to educate individuals as to the fact that tech careers are open to all and that they're great places where everyone can be successful. But I think there needs to be more of that. We need to accelerate that to make sure that we quite quickly get those people into the tech industry and then continue to support them so that we don't have those things that Lucy spoke about where 1 in 5, which is a mind-blowing stat, like aren't comfortable in either the industry or their role and want to move. And I think that we all have a role to play in making sure that we've created environments where everyone feels valued, comfortable, capable of succeeding and thriving in the role they're in, and we don't lose any people from this industry because we already know there's a skills shortage. My personal experience, I think the challenge for me was being a man trying to help in this world where I'm predominantly trying to help women. There was a lot of fear from my side about approaching that and thinking, okay, I want to do this, and it's been evidence to me that there's a need for some kind of support for these women. Not saying I'm the person to do it, but there's a need for some kind of support. What will the reaction be when I put myself out there as the person that's trying to help these individuals? Am I going to get that negative, who are you and why are you the person that telling me that you can help me? And thankfully, after 4 years of running this program with 2,200 people that are part of this network, I could probably think about 2 instances where that's actually come to life and there's been somebody that's reacted negatively to the fact that a man is running this program for women. So I think that speaks for itself, in terms of the ratio of people that actually welcome and appreciate non-female allies in this space far outweighs the people that will have an issue with that. And then the second part for me was, what will the perception be from the people that already know me and from my employer when I say that, this is something I'm passionate about and I want to help more women get into tech industry and make them more successful? Will there be a perception that I'm being biased towards women? What will my lads mates say in the group chat when they see me doing all this kind of stuff, promoting women's rights and things? Am I going to be labelled some crazy feminist? And all those kind of weird self-doubts that would potentially hold someone back if they're just not brave enough to take a step into this space. Does that answer your question, David?
It does. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much for you to share that. And Lucy, those, as Kevin said, those stats were like pretty mad. Disturbing is the word I used. Is there any thoughts in the room, so to speak, as to in agreement? Does it surprise any of you, negatively or positively, or does it just feel, yeah, that sounds about right to me?
For me, it definitely sounds about right. From my experience, the whole reason I got involved in the Women in Tech Mentoring program was because when I joined IT, I was the only girl in the office. There were no women at a senior level that I could talk to and get any advice from. So I've had to build my way of dealing with my stakeholders and people to make sure that I'm seen in the right light, and there's not those sort of typical things that people see about women that are powerful and confident in themselves. And I've worked with some men that have been absolutely fantastic allies, but I didn't know they were allies because I didn't know allyship was a thing back then. But for me, one of the things that's really kind of important from those stats is like how we can address it, and these sorts of communities and having these conversations and getting the word out there is that nobody's alone. Everybody's got someone that can support them, and whether that's living or breathing it in your day-to-day work, or whether it's you're out there in a community doing things in schools, it's so important to do. But as not shocked as I am by the stats that Lucy's shown, it's also, it makes you sad that we even have to still talk about those sorts of numbers. But again, going back to the purpose of this session and what we're doing with allyship, it's just so powerful, and that we are in a position where we can make positive change.
Can I just echo something, Sophie, of what you were just saying? It does also make me sad too that we're still talking about these stats. I picked up Harper's Bazaar this week, and there's a whole section in there about women who don't have confidence. And I read it and I was like, oh right, and it talked about women in male dominated fields, etc. And I read it and I was like, now we're talking about it in Harper's Bazaar, we're constantly telling women, oh, you don't have confidence. It's like isn't it? It's just, and I've just done it now. I've just shared a load of stats with you to say women aren't confident, women have this, but it just annoys me. I think I get more annoyed and angry about it now more than shocked.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, just to be open and stuff in this session, like I'm a massive introvert. I'm horrifically shy. So coming into a group of people in a sort of social sense and talk about things that I'm a little bit nervous about talking about is really hard. But in a work capacity, I've learned how to hide that and how to show like a super confident person that goes into meetings when actually I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what are people going to say? Am I going to deliver it the right way? What if I get tongue tied? How do I make sure that I'm coming across making the right impression? And I think that that's something that through when I'm mentoring people, I'm trying to encourage them not to be like me, to try and sort of find out who you are, what your sense of self is, be authentic, and be okay with the fact that sometimes you're going to go in a room and things might not land well. But that's no different than if a guy goes into a room and things don't land quite as well, or someone from a different background. It's all just making sure that you're comfortable with who you are, what your values are, and taking that step forwards.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sophie, especially, based on the fact that, you do find these things difficult. It's really great of you to share that. Thank you. And I was at your mentoring session at Service Desk Institute, and you were amazing. So if that feedback helps, because it's genuine, it's true. So I don't know if anyone else has got any thoughts on those stats they'd like to share. I have a few other things we can talk about in relation to allyship, but I don't want to move on too fast. If anyone's got anything they'd like to mention on those.
I think from my perspective, the stats, as hard as they are to read, I'm not entirely surprised. And it is a shame. I've worked up through kind of service desk roles through to service management leadership, and at every single level, at every point in my career, even to the present date, there is something along those lines. I mean, I remember starting out in tech, and people, it was at that point, it was, oh, you're really young. Oh, you're the only woman. Are you okay with that? And then as I've got older, it's kind of the jokes around, oh, well, we don't want to hire women because they can't rack servers. And I was like, I rack servers all the time. I'll get under a desk, and they're like, yeah, but you're different. I was like, why? Because I'll have a beer with you on a Friday. I'm not different. I will just roll up my sleeves and get on with it, as will any other female that has the intention to be in this role, if you let them in the door. So there is still so much work to do there, and that's part of the reason of me showing up to these things a bit more, is I want to help and contribute into that arena. And I've had conversations with Lucy in the past about going into schools and colleges and trying to help kind of put that, that stigma to bed, that women, if you're going into IT, it's because you're going in to be either something along the lines of a project manager, or business analyst or something, or a coder. Absolutely not. Go in, rack the servers, do the cabling, do whatever you need to do, and work your way up. But it's, as I say, the stigma is still there, very much so.
I think it's interesting what you've just said a little bit in terms of sometimes it's the societal norms of what you kind of expect women to do and not to do. And that's something, like, when I say I've battled with a lot, even like with my own husband, who is so chivalrous, and like he'll be the person, like, just little things like, oh, I'll carry your bags for you, but like little things I'm like, but I can carry them myself, I can pick this up myself. And like I'll be carrying like a heavy box, like we've been moving, and like previously, like, I've been a musician, I am used to like carrying drum kits around, like moving things about, but it's, oh, but you're a woman, you can't do that. And it's those different societal norms that also stream through, and you're like, but I can open a door. And that really just reflected. But then I know then on the other hand, my husband's then just like, oh, like, is chivalry dead now? Because I'm doing this because like I love you in that way. And this is kind of how he's been brought up. But then there's this kind of like clash between, he's like, I'm not meaning it to be as a like condescended or anything like that. And I think that's like a real key area as well. That's kind of bubbling.
I agree with you, Sophie. You touched on the point I was about to make as well. We're sort of typecast in a way, aren't we? Our stories are already told, and we're told what to do in a way. And so it plays into the bigger economic case that we tend to be economically on the back foot as well. So it's the design seems to be, you know, that we can't strive for independence and we can't strive for our own identity. So allyship for me is everyone playing an active role, building the linkages and the support to break through that, you know, economic disparity that is out there.
I definitely agree with that. I think one of the things that Sophie said just made me chuckle, because it reminded me of something when I was an infrastructure engineer. I trained 2 of the desktop support people so that they could take over from me and I could truly do the infrastructure support. And I've done the climbing under the floors, Georgie, and doing all the cabling, and my hands fit down the side of the racks and all of that. But one of the things that surprised me was the response from a woman that I had, which was possibly the most sexist thing that I've ever experienced. Was I was going to fix her computer, had the 2 guys with me. She looked at the guys expectantly, answering to them when I was talking to her, and then she turned to me, and she'd known me for years, and she said, "Can you fix it as well as the boys?" And I had to pause for a moment. I was like, I can't believe somebody's just said that to me, and I can't believe it's a woman that said that to me. So my response was, yes, because I'm teaching them how to do what I do. But it's that other side of as the societal norms and the challenges that we face, that it's not just necessarily men that think of us in a particular way. It's generally that's what everybody's been taught, that maybe the girls can't do it as much as boys. That's why you have pink clothes and blue clothes. I personally dress my kids in black and brown because that's what I like to do. But it just made me think that I just thought I'd share that moment that I had, which was quite entertaining, but also I can't believe you just said that to me.
There's some research that backs that, Sophie, and I think it's funny because we had a recent chat and there were 4 women on a team call who had experiences in their 20s, in their early sort of ish career, with the more experienced IT women professionals really not happy if they were progressing or they became like leaders and things like that. And the research behind it was that because spaces at the top are so limited, women will fight other women and women are not happy. So that's another part of allyship that we need to get our head around, is that we you know, be kinder to that extent, because I experienced it when I became a lead business analyst, and the women you know, really showed their true colours, and I thought it's a reflection on you, you know, that you can't be supportive of that.
I'd be curious to see if you all think that that's shifting and changing, because I definitely had a terrible experience with a woman who was kind of more towards the end of her career, and she just turned around to me one day and said, and I was kind of at the early stages of mine, and she's like, "I'm just, you know, you're trying to take my job." And I thought, the last thing I want to do is your job. Like, no, thank you. But and I had some conversations this week with women who are a little bit more senior in their roles and what they're doing a bit further along than myself. I mean, I mentioned the term allyship, and they said about women having problems with women, but from my perspective, I'm noticing that the kind of women we're raising now into these fields are a lot more empowering. And I wondered if you all had the same or similar view or a different view to that.
I just want to say, so I recently moved into tech, and all the women I've ever encountered have been so supportive. And where my team is predominantly women, and it wasn't like intentional. It just so happens that we were the best of the candidates that got the role. So there is a shift, definitely, and I can feel it, like not just with these groups, but so many. Anytime you mention that you're at a networking event, you're in tech, they're like, "Oh, come and join this group, blah, blah, blah. Come and speak to this person's the head of this, and they can talk to you." So there's definitely been a shift. In my previous career, there was a lot of competition, and I'm just like, this is so unnecessary. But again, it's internalized, and I think we're shoved in, like the way we grew up in the media, it was all shoved down our throats that women see each other as competition, blah, 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 blah. So there's definitely a shift for sure.
It's really interesting, because I know there's a couple of you. I now know that you've changed career, and I know there's someone else on the call that's changed career. Because I've only ever worked in tech. I may have worked in tech in multiple organizations, you know, in different industries, but only ever in tech. Is what we're seeing here, in your opinion, same, better or worse than what you've seen elsewhere in different industries?
I used to work in advertising and television, and that was pretty cutthroat. But that just wasn't just
Right.
the women; that was also the men. I don't know. I think people work crazy long hours, underpaid, and just it was like Hunger Games, honestly. Like, but yeah, it was just. But I think people used to celebrate how much they worked and how much little sleep they got, and then they went out partying afterwards. And it was a real badge of honor. So there's been such a shift, society, and I have to say, because of lockdown, we all had that kind of like come to Jesus moment. We're like, actually, why are we doing this? And I think there's been definitely in the last couple of years, and I think there's going to be more of that we were more focused on our well-being and how to help one another, how to support one another, because we're not an island, so it's your colleagues that have, because if you think about it, you spend more, unfortunately, the way that we work, we sometimes feels like we spend more time with our colleagues than actual loved ones. And I have to say, some of my colleagues have got me through some tough times, like the probably toughest times in my life, where I couldn't be in touch with family because it just so happened I had to be at work. So yeah, there's been a real, I think, I'm not sure what it's like in other industries now, but definitely when I was, it was awful. It was like the lion's den every day.
I when you talk about other industries, David, I always try and be pragmatic about representation of different groups and things, and I think teaching's a really interesting one, and Sophie will know this because she's from that background. Especially look at primary school teaching, like there's a real shortage of men in that industry, because the probably perceptions about men that want to teach kids, it's not the seen thing or done thing. So only 16% of primary school teachers are men. So you could suggest that more needs to be done in that industry to promote men into those roles, but that highlights even more the societal things that we have around leadership, because 27% of primary school teachers are men. So in terms of the ratio of men that exist in that industry, twice as many of them go on to the leadership roles than the women do. So that for me highlights that, we're not necessarily always talking about women are underrepresented in every industry, but even the ones where they're the dominant force, men seem to get the leg up when it comes to these leadership roles.
Okay. Yeah. And this is not a conversation about men, but I also wanted to just return to something that you mentioned earlier, Kevin, to see if it stimulates any thoughts, because I spent a long time thinking about getting involved in this program, but I didn't get involved for the very same reasons you were thinking about when you were setting it up, because I was concerned that I would be placing myself in a position of authority or offering empowerment to women, which was never my intention. And I didn't understand the definition of allyship until literally, as I mentioned in my intro, when Lucy and I first met. And I think I think this brings together some societal perspective that men need educating in what they can offer in terms of allyship without feeling like they need to ask permission of themselves or others to do so. I went and spoke with my wife. I went and spoke with my wife's friends. I spent a year doing that and still not hearing from them enough to make me get involved. I carried on mentoring in other environments where it wasn't based on supporting a gender or somebody from a different background. So they just came to me and it felt easier. But I think that societal aspect and what you said earlier, Kevin, is really, I guess, apt for those men that want to help, because it feels quite difficult to do so it certainly did for me. It sounds like it did for you. And I can never say I've been in any of your shoes in terms of Lucy's shoes when Lucy and I speak, because I may have been in the shoes in that aspect of that role on that day, but never as a female, only ever as a privileged white male. So that was another thing that was hard for me to get my head around. I can go and mentor in the BCS, mentor a male there, no problems. I've been where they've been. I've done what they've done. I've had those experiences. And so, as much as this isn't a session about, men per se, I think for us to feel like we can help, we also need to be educated.
Yeah, I think there's an element of education, but I think also an element of the groups that we would like to be allies to inviting you in and welcoming you in. I've got real issues with some groups that I've heard of where it might be, for example, a BAME group, and they exclude white people from joining that group. And I'm like, are you absolutely insane? Because if somebody is willing to come and be the minority in your group and actually, become the center, the potential focus for any criticism, but they're the ones that are turning up willing to try and do something to change things, like, we should embrace that, and we should absolutely bring them in. So I think that companies and the individuals that are in the minority groups have a part to play in this, in terms of encouraging other people to become allies for them. How you do that, I don't know, but but be open to it.
I think something that upset me the most when I started to look into allyship and understanding the people that I had around me. There's a really close friend of mine who's a massive ally of mine as well, and he goes out his way to help other women too, not just myself. And he's been married for a while, he's got 2 twins, and his friends turned around to him and said, "Oh, you're just doing this to get laid." And I think that's something, and I think men get a little bit of an unfair, sometimes, a little bit of an unfair brush tarnish. And I think that's something that we do need to consider when we talk about allyship as well. And I guess David and Kevin, you two haven't said it, but I think, you've probably had those experiences perhaps as well. And that's probably stopped you and held you back from helping others, women specifically.
I have, and I didn't ask any of my male friends before I got involved in this, because I kind of knew what they would say. Because we'd had the conversations in the past. I've got friends who run their own organisations, and they employ a certain demographic of person based on what you would expect from that organisation. It's travel based, and I knew it wasn't even worth asking him, because I knew. But then we've had conversations since I have got involved, and it turned out I was right not to ask, which is a real shame. Anyway, Sat, you've got your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's jump in at this point. So I was really interested on hearing Kevin talk about, am I the right person to be speaking about or supporting women when I'm not a woman, quite obviously. And I heard it very recently. The first time actually anybody mentioned it, from a quite well known female speaker, actually speaks on women in tech, and she said to me, "What's it got to do with you? Why are you involved?" And I was very taken aback. I've actually spoke with on the same forums as her and events as her, and coming from her, it did take me back, and it did make me think, well, maybe she's right. Why am I doing this? I want to help, but maybe I'm not the right person to be speaking about this. And it really questioned. I mean, I was only recently. It made me question myself and think, well, what? Perhaps I shouldn't be doing this at all. Actually, perhaps I can carry on doing the work that I do in diversity, in supporting women in tech in the background, but perhaps I shouldn't be speaking about it or putting myself out there about it. So it was very interesting to hear, Kevin, that you've had probably more than myself in terms of comments such as that. With regards to men, I hear it all the time, constantly hearing, what you do. Not definitely. I've not heard the to get laid one, because I've not heard that one at all. But just you don't really mean any of this. Why are you doing it? It's not you. And I just ignore it. And you just carry on doing it. But the one that really made me question whether I should be doing it was when it came from a female.
I have to say, from my perspective, that's 100% wrong. And I would always encourage anybody who wants to be a mentor. It doesn't matter where you're from, what gender you are, what your background is. If you want to get involved, get involved. When Kevin posted about, I think it was a post, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, about getting some male mentors in the program, the first thing I did was I went straight into my LinkedIn, and I sent messages to about 10-15 guys that I know that I knew would be brilliant mentors, because for me, having that insight to somebody who maybe has had privilege gives me something to work from. So whenever I'm having conversations with CIOs or anybody in the exec, or even anybody that's coming on the way up through the ranks, talking to somebody from a different background gives me context. As a mentor, I learn as much from the mentees as they learn from me, because I don't come from their background. I don't know, I don't walk in their shoes, but I do have empathy and I can try and figure out how I can work with them. But 100%, if you want to get involved, whoever said that, I don't know, and I'm not going to ask, but whoever said that was wrong. Yes, get involved, because the more people we can get involved, the more women that work together, the more people work together, it can only end in positive results, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that I remember that instance, Sophie, and it was wicked for us, because there were people that I was connected to that I've known for years, like Tom, who got involved in the program off the back of effectively your invitation for him to come and join it. And I suspect that him and Chris and other people like that may have seen some of our posts and assumed it's not my place to get involved in that. You know, it is a women's network, it's women helping women. But as soon as one of our members invited some more men to be part of it, they were like, yeah, absolutely. And they've added massive value since being part of the network as well.
Yeah, and in fact, I never started. Sort of by volunteering to be in a part of the network. I was picked out by Chloe Gillard, who's a diversity lead at the company, and she knew the work that I was doing in my practice, supporting women, bringing in, ensuring that women had fair opportunities to come in and join my team, as well as promoting women. And she asked if I could attend and speak at events and speak about the work that I'm doing. So I never spoke about it, until she kind of volunteered me to be at certain events. And just the recent encounter, I genuinely questioned whether I should continue doing it or not. So I'll continue the work for certain, but whether it's my place to be speaking at events or speaking on panels or speaking at presentations about women is it's in doubt.
Can I jump in? Hi, it's Julian here, and I'm quite sort of new to this group. I've met a few folks around the table. Lucy and I have known each other for quite a few years. We worked together a long while back for a while, and I think first and foremost, just to the folks who are really kind of driving this initiative forward, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I guess just listening to what folks have had to say, hearing some of the stats that Lucy quoted earlier, I've been sat here sort of reflecting back on, I don't know, I've been working in technology for sort of 30 years plus. In the last 10, 20 years, I've led quite big teams of people, and kind of reflecting on some of the successes there, both in terms of people, and particularly women that I've mentored, but also the sort of shapes of the teams that I've led have sort of changed and evolved over time, where I've started to see more women in some of the more senior roles and the next level down and that. So I think, and this is all anecdotal, I've got no stats to quote, but it's kind of where I've been and what my experience has been, is I think that the situation, it feels as though it's improving rather than worsening, which I think is positive. But just kind of reflecting on the conversation, that the question that's coming into my head is what more can I be doing to help the situation along? Because I think that having these sorts of sessions where we all come together is great, but are folks actually leaving with some benefit from these sessions? In other words, what are folks taking away that's going to be different tomorrow as a consequence, and that's going to help? And it's it's folks like me and other of us on the call, who could potentially be doing something different, could change something, or that could really make quite a big difference. And that's what I'm quite interested in, is are there folks on the call who have seen quite a seed change because something happened and would love to see more of it? Or because if there's something that we can embed kind of going forward, then that could have quite a far-reaching impact. So it's really a question more than any kind of big revelation. I don't know, any thoughts?
I can jump in if you like. I'm Chiara, for who doesn't know me. I find this conversation very interesting because actually, you know, people are in different environments and got different perception. So in my opinion, I'm quite frustrated because 20 years ago I was at uni doing engineering and studying engineering, and it was like perhaps 5 of us among 100 students. And 20 years afterwards, it's still like that, if not even less. I'm platform owner. I have been working between retail and finance services last 10 years plus in finance services. And it's all men, middle-aged, British. Leadership roles, yes. Perhaps high-level senior management, there are women, but not for technology roles, technical roles. I was a manager in technical roles, and everyone was looking at me like I was a walking ghost. It's not so. Yeah, I've got a completely different point of view, experience. That's it. I can see director, chiefs, head of finance, I don't know, risk. But in terms of, let's say, how many directors, head of IT, or chiefs, execs, you say that there are women, very, very few. And every time it's like, just because you're a woman, it's like, do I trust you? Do you know your things? So it's interesting very much, and I'm very glad to know that somebody's got a different perception than mine, different experience, because it means I got a little bit of hope despite keep being in the wrong environment, or let's say not wrong environment, sorry, that's not what I meant. It's an environment that's not so balanced. Personally, I also think that it really annoys me when I see all these advertisements about companies, businesses, about their inclusion, diversity inclusion, where sometimes I knew it wasn't something that was really meant to be something true, something honest, and it was more marketing campaign, and that is just a paid lip service that is really, really utterly annoying. Yes.
That is still
Very mean.
100% going on at the moment. I have
Yeah.
recently interviewed for a desktop support position, and someone said to me, "Oh, I want the girl." And when it came down to the final round of interviews, I felt she wasn't the right candidate, and I made my case as I want the right candidate for the job. I don't want to tick the box. He wanted to tick the box so that we had the diverse team, and it's the wrong reason. And thankfully, I pushed it through. We got the right candidate, and I felt bad excluding her because I do want more women in the role, but equally, it's got to be for the right reasons. And I think that's where companies are getting it wrong at the moment. Some people are being put into those positions to tick the diversity boxes, and there's so much work to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because there's the case of the RAF. I don't know if you've been following that, which has only come out in the last few hours, where they've been found to be discriminating against white men because of the female and the ethnic targets that they've had, and actually the whistleblower on those targets was a female. It's interesting. I don't know if anybody's been following that in the news at all.
Yeah, I have. Very interesting.
I've been told in the past to make sure that my next hire was female because my team was male. And I pushed back and said, but shouldn't I be picking the best person for the job? Shouldn't I be going based on talent? And I think going back to what your question was, Julian, about what we can do more of, I think it's looking at what we've got in the teams. If in your teams, in your organisation, that there are women, young people who are interested in progressing, is maybe we take a little bit of extra time to see how can we help them. Is there any kind of I don't know, mentoring scheme internally that we can try and drive the promotion to get more involved, to bolster people? I think that one of the things that I can't remember who it was that was mentioned earlier on about talking about in schools. I would love to go and talk in schools to say, come on, let's get more young people involved. My eldest daughter, when she went into her first day, some of you have heard me say this before, her first day in computer science for GCSE, she was the only girl. And she came to me and she said she wanted to quit, but me and her male teacher persuaded her to stay. And we talked about how we could work around that situation. So I think there's lots of things that we can do to look about what have we got in our environment? What are we doing to make sure that we're promoting that sort of diversity, inclusion, and driving the right behaviours, and then following up on the actions to keep bolstering the support we can give, not just young women, but also anybody that's young or from different backgrounds, to make sure that we are being all inclusive.
You're first, David.
Thank you, sir. I know, but I wonder if we're going to say the same thing.
That's why I'm letting you go first, so I don't have to speak.
So I think, Kira, I'm really sad to hear that that's the case for you, firstly, but I'm not surprised. I was more surprised to hear people see it's improving, because I personally think it's going the other way myself. Now, I promise, as the co-creator of this community, I was always going to do this at 10:02, but Julian kind of kicked it off 7 minutes early, and Sophie went right in and started talking about what's next, both earlier and just a moment ago. And I think that's the thing I'd like to try and kind of go through in these next 10 minutes. I didn't know if that's what you were going to start talking about, Kevin, before I kind of insert what you were going to say. I'm happy to carry on, and if I cover what you want, I'm good, or I'll leave a couple of minutes for you.
I was just going to make sure that we responded to Julian's question, which was, what are the actual actions, the real steps that we can take? I was going to do that by doing what I do best, which is the way I've been able to create this network without feeling the pressure of feeling like I'm telling women what to do, because I don't do any of the work. I just point people in the direction of somebody else that can help. So, you know, when I set the network up, it was very much, I'm not trying to be the one that's telling you I'm better than you, but I'm trying to connect you with this lady over here, Sophie, who is incredible, and she can tell you that, and she can tell you what to do. So yeah, for me, Julian, I think you're already doing some of the right things by turning up to things like this. The main challenge, I'd say, when you're trying to be an ally and work out how you can add value, is making yourself visible. And whether that's through, you know, talking about it, coming to sessions like this, putting something on your LinkedIn profiles and things to kind of to put yourself out as a male ally so that you are approachable. You know, I think the people that want and need help don't always ask for it, but there are some that will, and they're more likely to ask you if they know that you're approachable. I think there's some amazing people on this call, like Sat, who've done some great things internally. Other chaps I know that have been nominated and beat me to like Male Ally Awards and things, like the Darren, the CIO at Centrica. So if you're ever thinking about, you know, when I'm in a leadership role again, how do I improve things for people in my organisation? I can connect you with individuals like that have done real pragmatic things in their businesses that have worked and have been proven to work. And I've got to have a pitch for the mentoring program, haven't I? So, you know, if you were to want to get involved in this, you're not putting yourself out there saying, hey, I have all the answers and I'm definitely going to, you know, change your life. But you're saying, I have some experience, and if you think that I'm the right person to come and speak to and get some advice from, there's a mechanism now within this platform for you to reach out to and connect to me. And I'm sure that's that's helped David to become a male ally by having that route to market. I'm sure Natalie won't mind me saying that she joined the program recently, and I connected her with a couple of male mentors, Sridhar being one of them, that if they weren't part of this program, Natalie wouldn't have known to ask me about, do you know any people that can help me with my situation? and I wouldn't have known to connect them to Natalie. So I think it is that networking aspect of it, and being visible as a male ally is probably the key first step.
Thank you, Kevin. And I know you got your hand up, Lucy, but I reckon I'll take a minute to do this if that's okay, and then we'll go from there. So I'd like to ask a question. If everyone would just, like, I don't know, stick a hand up, put a thumb up. Has this session been useful, and would you like to revisit this in the future, whether it's under the guise of ITSM or not? Brilliant, thank you. I personally think for next steps, I loved what you were saying, Sophie, about schools, college and university. The reason I wanted to set up and work with Lucy on setting up this community was to help women in tech, but also to demystify service management. I now feel like it's a bit of a double mission to demystify allyship and what it really means to the people that need it and the people that want to offer it. And I completely agree, schools, colleges and universities is a great place to go. I'm glad you put your camera on, Jag, because I know you're a BCS Early Careers Ambassador. I think that's another place we can go to. And if you don't mind picking that up, maybe we can bring it back to another session or do it outside.
Definitely.
But I think that would be great. I'm also a BCS member, and I think that organisation needs a bit of a jolt to help with this kind of stuff, and we're a better place to start. And then I think the thing we can all do within the organisations we work with is to start talking about this programme in those organisations, but also, I know you say, Kevin, you don't do anything, but you actually do an awful lot. And one of the things you do is you get this programme into organisations. So if any of you are working with around approximately near an organisation where you think this kind of conversation would float, let's bring it back here. I'm going to do the same. I don't know what it's going to look like yet. That's what the community is about. A community helps to form this approach. But I guess to answer Julian's question before I hand over to Lucy, let's start thinking about how we get back together. Maybe we discuss action as much as how we're all feeling. That action could evolve around educating schools, colleges and universities. Who knows how? We'll figure it out. The action could involve educating people early in their careers, working with JAG and the BCS. And then the action could also be working with our organisations. And then the other action, as Kevin rightly said, is just supporting one another, getting involved, being vocal, and just giving one another the support that we all need to kind of start moving this forward. That all sounds a bit like a party manifesto. It's not supposed to sound like that. My wife does say maybe I should go into politics, but that would be awful. Lucy, I know you had your hand up, so I know I took 2, not 1 minute.
No, absolutely fine. I more just wanted to answer Julian's question as well, really, which we kind of all started to do. And I wrote some notes down of what I think we can all do to be better allies. The first thing I'll say is about sharing a piece of the pie. That's what I call it, really. So, you know, we've all got our own kind of pie, and I think it's about sharing that piece. So what I mean by that is I have a friend who was interested in kind of shifting careers into a bit more of a consulting kind of role. I've worked with lots of different consultancy firms in different industries I've worked with. Me being me, I always create great networks, lasting relationships. I was able to go, well, actually, let me introduce you to ABC. So I ended up introducing her to 5 people, which meant that was me sharing a piece of a pie. I think it's about turning up to things like this for sure, about learning and educating ourselves, whether that's about male allyship, whether it's other topics we want to explore as well. But I also think that it's about having a level of empathy and creating that safe space for people and being able to, you know, when I speak to David or when I speak to Julian or even when I speak to Sophie and Georgie, and I speak to them, I never feel embarrassed of the things that I'm about to say. And I think that's something that we can all take away, making that safe space, listening, that active listening, and kind of having a bit of a coach-like approach. And Julian, I hope you don't mind me kind of saying this. I know we've been friends for a long time, but Julian helped me out recently with something. And what was so valuable for me was that, first of all, I know that we're friends, but I felt like you dropped everything and you came straight to my house. We live near each other, by the way. And you helped me but you didn't just come and tell me what to do. You coached me through it, and you gave me lots of kind of ways for me to think about how I was going to react to this certain situation. And for me, that was so valuable, because you weren't coming in as the CIO that I know that you are. You weren't going on, oh, if it was me, I'd do this, this, this. You weren't kind of puffing your chest and doing that. You were on the same level as me. You never made me feel like I was a junior, or I couldn't, or embarrassed, or, you know, I was crying, by the way, everyone. And you never made me feel like I was kind of, you know, small. And that's what I mean by being more coach like. You're kind of, you know, no roles here, you're on an equal playing field. I think that was everything. And I know time is kind of running out, but I think Sat, you gave a really great example last week when you spoke at Aviva, of a story, and I kind of won't share it in case you want to share it now, but around how you helped a woman come, you interviewed her, and then you helped her, and then you gave her the job. That story, which I think is a great act of allyship, but I don't want to steal your thunder by telling everyone the story.
But that's fine. I mean, we could tell you for. I'm happy to share it now, but we could, you know, conscious of the time. David, I don't know what you want to do. You're on mute.
On mute.
It's a bit of marketing for the next event, I think.
Yeah, leave it as a cliffhanger. Leave it as
Yeah.
a cliffhanger. Yeah.
But put that on the agenda, Sat, because it's a great story.
And Lucy, I've had another one since, like, related to that one, so I'll save both for next time.
What a cliffhanger!
So
I'll
you
hand
see,
back
you
over
don't have to stop. Please carry on.
Please do.
Well, I'll hand back over to David, because I feel like I'm conscious that we've got 2 minutes left, and I could talk about allyship for hours on end. So hopefully that kind of, again, Julian, hopefully that answers your question as well around what we can all do to kind of maybe take it away, something for us to be better allies.
Definitely some food for thought, isn't it? And stuff we can kind of sleep on and revisit in the next session, hopefully. Yeah, some good thoughts and ideas there, though. Thank you.
Yeah. I've got a suggestion based on what Sophie was saying. How do all the ladies on the call feel about making an action to, if there is a male role model in your life that you have had a positive interaction with in a mentoring capacity, inviting them to join the network.
Yeah.
And then the next call we'll have some new male blood as well to talk about allyship.
Yeah. Why not?
Awesome. Go on, David.
Thank you, Kevin.
Wrap us up, mate.
I'll do my best. I don't know how I follow you all, to be perfectly honest. I still want to know that story, but I'm good. Kevin, hold that cliffhanger right there. So this is not the end of the ITSM Women in Technology Community of Practice. I think it's just the beginning of a new form of ITSM Women in Technology Community of Practice. We will continue this allyship conversation, not just in this community, but in the other communities. But I think between Kevin, Lucy, and I, we'll go away and figure out how we bring this back and give it its own platform. One that it shares with every role that we support in the Women in Technology programme. And also I'll be in touch with Jag to talk about the BCS piece. If we do something, everybody, it'd be great if you can come and support it over there too. That would be awesome of you. But I think ultimately, thank you everybody for coming along today. I appreciate it's 4 to 5 p.m. on a Friday. You've all been absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared and for contributing. This is not the end. It's merely the beginning. So thank you very much and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
David
you,
and Lucy.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.